Welcome, Junior Tuckies. My name is Mrs. Ramlal. This section is known as plant tissues. And in this section, there are 5 videos, 4 theory videos, and 1 exam video. This is the second theory video on ground tissues. Now, when we talk about ground tissues, we talk about tissues that make up bulk of the plant. Here, it says abundance. Yes, it makes up most of the part of the plant. So when you do roots, stems, and leaves, you will notice that you will come across most of the ground tissue. Now, the first of the ground tissue that we're going to look at is parenchyma tissue. Now, if you look at this diagram, this is a transverse section or cross section. This is a longitudinal section. So when you look at this tissue, you can see that these cells are irregular shaped. The tissue is living and there are very big air spaces. Now, one thing I'd like to teach you when it comes to plant tissues, wherever you see air spaces, that function is for gaseous exchange. Now, this tissue, parenchyma, is one of the most important tissues. In roots, stems, and leaves, this tissue is in most abundance, meaning you will find this tissue in almost all parts of the root, stem, and the leaf. This tissue has a large vacuole, and the large vacuole is there for storage of food and water. And then you have the air spaces. The air spaces, like I just mentioned, is there for gases exchange. Sometimes this tissue can be modified and have chloroplast. And when this tissue has chloroplast, this tissue will be used for photosynthesis. When the parenchyma tissue has chloroplast, then we call that tissue Sclerenchyma. And the Sclerenchyma tissue you will actually mostly find in the leaf. Now, here you will look at the Sclerenchyma tissue. And this is specifically found in a leaf. Now we're going to look at these 2 tissues. This tissue here is the palisade parenchyma tissue. Now it's called the palisade parenchyma because it looks like palisade fences. They're right next to each other. These tissues are regular shaped, tightly packed, and this tissue, these dots here, those are the chloroplasts. So this tissue has the most amount of chloroplasts. The second parenchyma tissue is the spongy parenchyma tissue. Again, it gets its name from the word sponge. A sponge has a lot of air spaces. So you can see there's a lot of air spaces. You can see that this tissue is irregular shaped and there are fewer chloroplasts. So that is the palisade parenchyma and the spongy parenchyma. Together, these 2 tissues make up the mesophyll tissue in a leaf, and these are modified parenchyma tissue. Now, Collenchyma tissue comes from the word, you can remember, corners, so Collenchyma. This is a diagram of the Collenchyma tissue. Collenchyma, if you look at it, these tissues at the corners are thickened. Now, anything that is thickened, a thick corner is there for protection. So this tissue is obviously there to protect. It's going to surround important tissues to protect those tissues. And anything that's thick in a plant is there for strengthening and supporting. Now it talks about petioles and leaves. Now a petiole is a leaf stalk. This is the petiole. Now the petiole needs to have a lot of support to hold the leaf upright. That is why in the petiole you will have a lot of collenchyma to hold the leaf upright. So this tissue is there for strengthening, support, and protection. Sometimes this tissue can also be modified and have chloroplasts. If this tissue will have chloroplasts, then this tissue can photosynthesize. When we talk about this tissue being thickened, this tissue is actually thickened at the corners with cellulose. And so, of course, we know it's the primary cell wall that is thickened. So that is the Collenchyma tissue. This is obviously a living tissue, as well as the parenchyma tissue was also living. Right, let's get to the Sclerenchyma tissue. This is the first of the tissues, the ground tissues that is non-living. If you look at the diagram, there are 2 types of Sclerenchyma cells. A sclerid, which is known as a stone cell, and a fiber. These cells are extremely thickened with lignin. Now lignin, as you know, is very hard, much harder than cellulose. So this tissue is extremely thick and hard. And so this tissue is the best tissue for strengthening, support, and protection. Now, because it's surrounded by lignin, it's obviously going to protect one of the most important tissues. And one of the most important tissues in a plant is the xylem and the phloem, which transports water and food. And this tissue, because it's thickened, this tissue will also play a role in strengthening and supporting. Now, if you can see, this tissue is non-living, so there's no nucleus. There's only a lumen, which is a space, and pits. Pits are there to maintain communication between nearby cells. So, thank you for joining me on the video on ground tissue. Join me for my other videos on vascular tissue as well. Thank you.